The restaurant buzzed with laughter, silverware clinking against fine china, and the hum of conversations blending into an elegant symphony. It was the kind of place where people celebrated anniversaries, business deals, and milestone moments. Tonight, however, it would become the scene of something unforgettable. Olivia sat at a candlelit table near the center of the room, her fingers wrapped around the stem of her wine glass. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She had never done anything like this before. Her entire body felt tense, her stomach twisting in knots. The waiter had just refilled her glass when the large screen at the front of the restaurant flickered to life. It was meant for displaying birthday messages, special announcements, or slideshows for private events. But tonight, it would expose a different kind of surprise. The image appeared. A woman. Delicate black lingerie. A seductive pose. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Conversation stopped. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Some diners exchanged awkward glances, unsure if this was an intentional display or a mistake. But Olivia knew better. She had sent that image. And she had made sure everyone would see it. Across the room, Richard, her husband, stared at the screen, his face draining of color. The bloodshot look in his eyes, the way his lips parted slightly, the stiffness in his posture, all of it screamed guilt. Beside him, Vanessa, his secretary, let out a strangled sound, almost like a whimper. She clutched Richard's arm as if that would somehow make her invisible. He yanked his arm away, stepping back as though the distance could erase what was already exposed. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Isn't that Richard Bennett?" someone murmured. "Who is she?" "His wife?" another asked. "No, that's not his wife." A waiter rushed to the manager, who scrambled toward the control panel, frantically pushing buttons to take the image down. But the damage was done. People had already seen it. And, in this age of smartphones, some had taken photos. The moment was immortalized. Richard turned toward Olivia, his jaw tightening. "What the hell is this?" His voice was low, sharp, almost a growl. Olivia lifted her glass, taking a slow sip of wine. Her hands no longer trembled. The moment had arrived, and strangely, she felt calm. "You tell me, Richard." His nostrils flared. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Take it down." "Too late." She tilted her head. "You should be thanking me. At least now, you don't have to sneak around anymore." Vanessa looked like she wanted to disappear. Her face burned red, and she glanced around, as if searching for an exit. Olivia let out a small, humorless laugh. "Not so fun when the secret is out, is it?" Richard grabbed Olivia's wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to let her know he was furious. "What have you done?" She met his gaze without flinching. What needed to be done? The room still buzzed with murmurs. A few people discreetly checked their phones, probably looking up Richard's name. Olivia didn't care. Let them talk. Let them spread the news. The restaurant manager finally managed to shut the screen off, but the tension in the air didn't fade. The damage was irreversible. Richard exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Let's go outside. Now." Olivia leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Why? So you can lie to me in private?" Vanessa took a step back, her hands shaking. I should go." Richard glared at her. "No. We're dealing with this." Olivia chuckled. "Oh, now you want to deal with it?" She gestured toward the door. "Fine. Let's go outside. But I hope you have something good to say, Richard. Because I already know the truth." She pushed her chair back and stood. Her legs felt steady. Strong. For months, she had lived in doubt. The late nights. The sudden work trips. The hushed phone calls. He had made her feel like she was crazy for suspecting anything. But now, the truth stood in front of her, unable to hide. As they stepped outside into the crisp night air, Olivia turned to face him. "Start talking." Richard rubbed his temples, his frustration boiling over. "What do you want me to say, Olivia?" "The truth." He scoffed. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." She folded her arms. "You humiliated me first." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the city filled the silence, the distant honking of cars, the chatter of pedestrians passing by, the hum of traffic lights changing. Vanessa took another step back. "I really should." "Stay," Olivia said sharply. "You had no problem sneaking around with him. Own it." Vanessa bit her lip, shifting uncomfortably. Richard ran a hand over his face. "It didn't mean anything." Olivia laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "That's your excuse?" Richard exhaled through his nose. "It was a mistake." Olivia tilted her head. "So you're admitting it?" Silence. His lack of an answer was answer enough. She let out a slow breath. "I gave you everything, Richard. Years of my life. And for what? I never meant to hurt you." She shook her head. "You did more than hurt me. You destroyed everything we built." Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and paled. Olivia smirked. "Let me guess. People are already texting you?" Vanessa didn't answer. Olivia turned back to Richard. "So what now? You want me to forgive you? Pretend like nothing happened?" Richard clenched his jaw. Before he could finish, Olivia pulled something from her pocket. A small envelope. She held it up. "Divorce papers. Already signed." Richard's eyes widened. "What? You lost me the moment you betrayed me." She handed him the envelope. "Consider this my final goodbye." Richard's hand trembled as he took the papers. "You planned this?" Olivia smiled. "You planned your affair. I planned my exit." She turned on her heel, walking away. She didn't need to hear his excuses. She didn't need closure. She had given herself the only closure she needed. Behind her, Richard stood frozen, still holding the divorce papers. Vanessa looked at him, unsure of what to say. But Olivia didn't care. She was finally free. The moment Olivia stepped out of the restaurant and into the cold night air, a strange feeling washed over her. Relief. Freedom. And yet, beneath that, something deeper simmered, anger. Not just at Richard, but at herself for trusting him for so long. The city lights flickered around her, the sounds of distant traffic filling the space where her thoughts should have been. She had done it. She had exposed him in front of everyone. But now came the real storm, the fallout. As she walked toward her car, her phone buzzed in her purse. She already knew who it would be. The messages had started pouring in the moment she sent that image to the restaurant screen. She slid into the driver's seat, locking the door before pulling out her phone. "Lauren, holy SHT, live. What did you just do? Asterisk. Emma, girl, tell me that was some kind of joke. Please tell me you didn't just expose Richard like that in public. Jake, her brother, call me. Now." Olivia sighed, tossing the phone onto the passenger seat. She couldn't deal with everyone's opinions right now. She had spent years keeping up appearances, pretending to be the perfect wife while Richard fooled around behind her back. Tonight, she had flipped the script. But now what? She rested her head against the steering wheel, exhaling slowly. The silence in the car felt heavier than the chaos she had just walked out of. Then, a knock on her window made her jump. She turned her head sharply, expecting to see Richard, but it wasn't him. Vanessa. Her hands were trembling as she stood outside the car, eyes filled with panic. Olivia hesitated for a second before rolling down the window just enough to hear her. Vanessa swallowed hard. I didn't know you were going to do that. Olivia raised an eyebrow. That makes two of us. Vanessa glanced over her shoulder, as if checking to see if Richard was nearby. Look, I don't want my whole life to be ruined over this. Olivia let out a bitter laugh. Funny. You didn't care about my life when you were sleeping with my husband. Vanessa flinched. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to get caught, Olivia cut in. Big difference. Vanessa's eyes darted around nervously. People are already calling me. My boss just texted me. I could lose my job. Olivia tilted her head. And? Vanessa's mouth opened, then shut. She let out a shaky breath. I know I messed up. But you don't understand. Something about the way she said it made Olivia pause. Don't understand what? Vanessa hesitated, then took a step closer. Richard isn't who you think he is. Olivia narrowed her eyes. I think he's a lying, cheating husband. Am I wrong? Vanessa looked away. That's not what I mean. Something about her tone sent a chill down Olivia's spine. 4 months. She had suspected that Richard had secrets. More than just the affair. Now, staring at the nervous woman in front of her, she wondered if she had just uncovered the tip of something much bigger. What are you saying, Vanessa? Olivia asked, her voice steady. Vanessa chewed on her lip before shaking her head. Forget it. You wouldn't believe me. Olivia's patience snapped. Try me. Vanessa hesitated for a long moment. Then, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, her face draining of color. Olivia caught a glimpse of the caller ID, unknown number. Vanessa's fingers trembled as she silenced the call. Then, without another word, she turned and hurried away, disappearing into the night. Olivia sat there, her mind racing. Something was wrong. And for the first time since her marriage had started falling apart, she realized, Richard's betrayal might not have been the worst of it. The next morning, Olivia woke up to the sound of her phone vibrating on her nightstand. The sun had barely risen, and she felt exhausted. Her mind had replayed the events of last night over and over again, keeping her from getting any real sleep. She reached for her phone and squinted at the screen. Jake, her brother, pick up. It's important. She sighed and answered. Jake, it's too early for this. What the hell did you do? His voice was sharp. I wake up, and the first thing I see on social media is your little stunt at the restaurant. Olivia sat up, rubbing her temples. I don't have the energy for a lecture. Well, you need to find some energy fast, Jake snapped. Because Richard's lawyers just called Mom and Dad. She froze. What? He's threatening legal action, Liv. A cold wave of shock rolled through her. For what? Exposing the truth? Jake sighed. You humiliated him in public. He's saying it was intentional defamation. Olivia let out a humorless laugh. Defamation? He cheated on me. Yeah, but you made it a spectacle. And now, he's playing the victim. Olivia gritted her teeth. Of course, Richard would try to twist this into her being the bad guy. He always had a way of turning things in his favor. Let him sue me, Olivia said, standing up. I'll bring out every piece of evidence I have. Jake was silent for a moment. Look, I get that you're angry. You have every right to be. But Olivia, something about this doesn't sit right with me. She frowned. What do you mean? I called a buddy of mine, he works in corporate law. He looked into Richard's company. Olivia's stomach tightened. And? Jake hesitated. There's something weird going on with his finances. Large sums of money moving in and out of accounts that don't match up with his business records. Olivia's pulse quickened. Are you saying he's laundering money? I don't know yet, Jake admitted. But whatever it is, it's shady. Olivia sank onto the edge of her bed. She had spent years married to Richard, and she had never questioned where the money came from. They had lived comfortably, too comfortably. Had she been blind to something much bigger? I need to know more, she said finally. I'll keep digging, Jake promised. But be careful. If Richard really is involved in something illegal, exposing his affair might be the least of your problems. Olivia swallowed hard. She had thought last night was the end of the battle. But now, she realized, it was just the beginning. Olivia sat at her kitchen table, gripping her coffee mug as if it were the only thing grounding her to reality. Jake's words from earlier still echoed in her mind, Richard's finances don't add up. Her husband had cheated on her, that much she had known. But laundering money? Hiding something even bigger? That was a whole new level of betrayal. She needed answers. Her laptop sat open in front of her, the screen glowing in the dim morning light. She had spent the last hour searching for anything suspicious about Richard's company. But corporate jargon and complex transactions made little sense to her. A sharp knock at the door made her jump. She hesitated before standing up and peeking through the peephole. Vanessa. A fresh wave of anger surged through her. What did she want now? Olivia had already exposed her. Hadn't she caused enough damage? Despite her frustration, curiosity got the better of her. She unlocked the door and pulled it open. Vanessa stood there, wearing a hoodie with the hood pulled up, her face pale and her eyes darting around as if she expected someone to be watching. We need to talk, Vanessa said in a low voice. Olivia folded her arms. Why would I want to talk to you? Vanessa took a shaky breath. Because you don't know the whole story. Olivia narrowed her eyes. I know enough. You slept with my husband. Vanessa winced but didn't deny it. That's not what I meant. She glanced behind her again before stepping closer. Richard is dangerous, Olivia. Olivia felt a cold chill run down her spine. What are you talking about? Vanessa hesitated, then whispered, Can I come in? Olivia's instincts screamed at her to slam the door in her face, but something in Vanessa's expression made her pause. She wasn't just guilty. She was afraid. Against her better judgment, Olivia stepped aside. Make it quick. Vanessa rushed inside, shutting the door behind her. She paced for a moment before turning to Olivia. I didn't come here to beg for forgiveness. I know what I did was wrong. But you need to understand, Richard isn't just cheating. He's covering something up. Olivia's stomach twisted. Like what? Vanessa hesitated, as if weighing whether she should say more. Then, she pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. After a second, she handed it to Olivia. A text thread with an unknown number filled the screen. Unknown, you think you're smart? Stay quiet, or you'll regret it. Unknown, don't make me remind you what happens when people get involved in things that aren't their business. Unknown, I know where you live. Olivia felt the air leave her lungs. She looked up at Vanessa. Who sent these? Vanessa swallowed hard. I don't know. But I got them after I tried to break things off with Richard. Olivia frowned. You mean before or after I exposed you too? Vanessa sighed. Before. That's why I looked so scared that night. I wasn't just afraid of what you would do, I was afraid of what he would do. Olivia clenched her jaw. So you're telling me Richard is threatening you? Vanessa shook her head. I don't think it's him. But someone close to him. Olivia felt her stomach churn. Had she just picked a fight with someone far more dangerous than a cheating husband? Her phone buzzed on the table, making both women jump. She grabbed it and checked the screen. "Jake, we need to meet. I found something." A meeting in secret. An hour later, Olivia pulled into the back parking lot of a small diner on the outskirts of town. She had told Jake to meet her somewhere quiet. If Richard really was hiding something, she didn't want to risk being seen. She spotted Jake's car parked near the back and walked over. He rolled down the window, his face tense. "Get in." She slid into the passenger seat and shut the door. "What did you find?" Jake didn't answer right away. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a folder, handing it to her. "I went deeper into Richard's company finances." Olivia flipped the folder open, scanning the documents. It didn't take a financial expert to see that something was wrong. Large sums of money had been wired in and out of Richard's business accounts. But the names attached to the transactions didn't match any real companies. "These businesses don't exist," Jake said. "They're fake corporations. Shell companies." Olivia's throat went dry. "So he is laundering money." Jake exhaled. "It's worse than that." He pulled out another document and pointed at a specific name. "Look at who's listed as the recipient of some of these transactions." Olivia's eyes widened. She knew that name. Randall Pierce. A well-known businessman. A man who had been linked to illegal dealings before but had never been caught. She looked up at Jake. "Richard is working with him?" Jake nodded. "And if Richard is involved with someone like Randall Pierce, that means he's playing a dangerous game." Olivia felt her pulse pounding in her ears. She had spent years married to Richard, and she had never suspected any of this. How deep did this go? Jake's face darkened. "And there's more." He hesitated before continuing. "Someone else has been looking into Richard, too. A journalist. But he went missing last year." Olivia's blood ran cold. She had thought exposing Richard's affair would be the end of it. But now, she was staring at something much bigger. Something that people had disappeared over. Jake put a hand on her shoulder. "Liv, you need to be careful. If Richard realizes you're digging, he won't just sit back and take it." Olivia clenched her fists. She wasn't the same woman who had blindly trusted her husband. She wasn't the woman who had smiled through his lies. She was done being a victim. "I need to talk to Vanessa again," she said. "She might know more than she realizes." Jake looked uneasy. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "I don't have a choice." Olivia had already set fire to Richard's perfect image. Now, she was ready to burn down his secrets, too. Olivia stared at the crumpled pieces of paper on her kitchen table, her mind racing. The words, "Randall Pierce," still echoed in her head, each syllable growing heavier with every passing second. There was no going back now. Richard's lies had uncovered something much bigger than infidelity. This was a game of power, corruption, and secrecy. A game that now involved people who were not afraid to kill to keep it under wraps. As she gathered her thoughts, Olivia's phone buzzed. A text from Jake. "Jake, I've got something. Meet me at the old warehouse on Mill Street. It's urgent." Her heart skipped a beat. Whatever Jake had found, it was clearly important. She grabbed her jacket, shoved the phone into her pocket, and walked out the door. The rain had started to fall, heavy and relentless, as if the world itself was mirroring her turmoil. The drive to Mill Street was short, but every minute stretched longer than the last. The thought of what could be hidden in that old warehouse gnawed at her, leaving her with a sense of dread in her stomach. When she finally pulled into the parking lot, she saw Jake's car parked in the far corner, under the dim light of a flickering street lamp. She parked next to it, grabbed her purse, and stepped out into the rain, pulling her hood over her head. The warehouse was old, abandoned, and looming in the shadows like a giant waiting to swallow her whole. Jake was standing at the entrance, looking over his shoulder nervously. "Liv, over here," he called, motioning for her to hurry. Olivia rushed to his side. "What's going on? What's so urgent?" Jake grabbed her by the arm and pulled her inside. The interior of the warehouse was just as eerie as the outside, dark, damp, and silent. Boxes were stacked haphazardly in the corners, and the floor was covered in dust. Jake led her to a back room, where a desk lamp illuminated a stack of files. "This is what I've been working on," Jake said, sitting down at the desk and flipping open one of the folders. He pointed to a series of photos. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as she looked at the first image. It was a photo of Randall Pierce, smiling, shaking hands with a man who was barely recognizable but whom Olivia immediately recognized as Richard. They were working together, Jake said, his voice low. And they weren't just laundering money. They were running a racket, a massive one. Drug trafficking, illegal arms sales, even human trafficking. Olivia's head spun. This wasn't just a cheating husband. Richard was involved in criminal enterprises that spanned continents. The realization hit her like a slap in the face, and she struggled to process the enormity of what she was learning. But it didn't stop there. Jake handed her another file. "This is the kicker," Jake said. "Remember that journalist I mentioned? The one who disappeared last year? I found his last known investigation. It's about Richard and Pierce." Olivia looked at the name on the file. Andrew Clayton, a well-known investigative journalist. She had heard about his disappearance, but she hadn't connected it to Richard until now. She flipped through the pages quickly. Andrew's research had uncovered links between Richard and some of the most dangerous people in the world. According to his notes, Richard had been supplying weapons to a group of rogue nations, using his business as a cover for the transactions. Andrew had been close to exposing the truth when he was last seen alive. His notes abruptly ended the day he vanished. This is insane," Olivia whispered, her voice shaking. "How deep does this go?" Jake shook his head. "I don't know, but it's bigger than we thought. If Richard finds out we're looking into this, we could be in serious danger." Olivia's mind raced. What could she do with this information? What had Andrew Clayton discovered that had cost him his life? She glanced at Jake, who was watching her intently, waiting for her response. "I need to confront Richard," she said, her voice hard. "I need him to know that I'm not afraid anymore." Jake reached for her arm. "Liv, you don't know what you're dealing with. This isn't just a cheating husband anymore. This is a criminal empire. You can't just walk up to him and demand answers." Olivia pulled her arm away. "I've already lost everything because of him. I'm not backing down now." Jake exhaled slowly, frustration clear on his face. "Then let me help. We need to be smart about this." Olivia stared at him, her heart pounding. She could feel the weight of the choices she was making, choices that could either expose the truth or bury her forever. She knew Jake was right, she couldn't take this on alone. But something inside her told her that she had to go through with it. "I'm doing this," she said, her voice firm. Jake hesitated but nodded. "Okay. But we do it my way. I'll gather more intel, find out where Richard is hiding his files. We need to be prepared for anything." Olivia stood up, her mind made up. "Let's do it." The next few days were a blur. Olivia barely slept, her mind consumed with the information she had uncovered. Jake had been working around the clock, digging into every lead, every connection that could tie Richard and Randall to their crimes. Meanwhile, Olivia had to continue playing the role of a dutiful wife, attending meetings, pretending everything was fine while her world unraveled. But deep down, she knew the clock was ticking. Every moment that passed brought her closer to a confrontation she wasn't Closer to a confrontation she wasn't sure she could survive. Richard had no idea what she had uncovered, and that was exactly why she had to act fast. One evening, she found herself at the same restaurant where she had exposed Richard's affair. The memories of that night flooded back, and she could almost hear the laughter and whispers of the patrons as the secrets of her marriage were laid bare for everyone to see. She had come here for a reason. Olivia walked up to the bar, where the bartender gave her a nod of recognition. "Back again?" he asked. Olivia smiled tightly. "Just need a drink to calm my nerves." She took a seat and ordered a glass of wine, trying to steady her hands. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, like she was being watched. It wasn't just paranoia, there was a presence in the air, something ominous. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jake. "Jake, I found something. Richard's been hiding something in a storage unit downtown. It's time to move." Her heart raced. This was it. She was about to confront the man she had married, the man who had betrayed her in ways she couldn't even comprehend. Olivia took a deep breath. She wasn't just exposing Richard's secrets anymore. She was exposing the truth about a criminal empire, one that could change everything. As she finished her wine, she stood up, ready for what lay ahead. But little did she know, someone was watching her. Someone who knew exactly what she was about to do. Olivia's heart thudded in her chest as she drove to the storage unit Jake had mentioned. The world outside the car was a blur, rain pelting against the windshield as if the heavens themselves were warning her. She wasn't just walking into a situation she could walk away from anymore. This had become a high-stakes game, a dangerous game she could no longer ignore. The GPS blinked on the screen, signaling that her destination was near. Mill Street. The same street where she had met Jake just days before. She barely recognized the area as she turned onto a narrow road that led to a complex of small, locked storage units. They were tucked away in the shadows, away from the main road, and surrounded by overgrown weeds and decay. She parked her car near the entrance, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The rain had started to ease up, leaving a thick mist in the air that added an eerie silence to the surroundings. Olivia stepped out of the car, her breath forming visible clouds in the chilly night air. The storage unit wasn't much to look at. It was just one of many, a nondescript concrete box with a rusty metal door. Jake's text had been clear, this was the one. She approached the door, her heart racing. The plan was simple: get in, find the evidence, and get out before anyone noticed. But Olivia knew better than to believe in simplicity now. This wasn't a simple mission. Richard's world was far more complicated and dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Every move she made now would be under the watchful eyes of people who were more than willing to go to extreme lengths to keep their secrets hidden. She glanced around. No sign of Jake. No sign of anyone. Just the cold, damp night. She tried the door, it was locked. Of course, it was. She'd have to find a way in. She pulled out her phone and texted Jake. "Olivia, the door's locked. What now?" A few moments later, Jake replied. "Jake, check the left side. I'll be there soon." Olivia nodded to herself, even though Jake couldn't see it. She moved quickly to the left side of the unit, where she found a small, rusted keypad. It seemed out of place, but then again, nothing about this place seemed ordinary. She punched in the code Jake had given her. The door clicked, and she opened it just enough to slip inside. The inside of the storage unit was dark, only lit by a single hanging bulb at the far end. The musty smell of old cardboard and dust filled the air as she stepped into the space. It was small, crammed with old furniture, boxes, and a few shelves lined with nondescript items. But Olivia wasn't there for the junk. She was looking for something specific. There, on the far side of the room, partially obscured by a stack of boxes, was a metal safe. It wasn't large, but it looked heavy, secure, and exactly what she had been searching for. She didn't hesitate. She moved toward it, her hands trembling slightly, but her resolve stronger than ever. As she knelt in front of the safe, she heard footsteps behind her. "Liv," Jake's voice was low and urgent. She turned quickly, her pulse skipping a beat. Jake was there, standing at the entrance of the unit, his face taut with concern. "I thought you said you'd be here sooner," she whispered, her voice tight with nerves. Jake stepped forward. "I couldn't risk anyone seeing me. Not now. We have to move fast." "What did you find?" Olivia pointed to the safe. "That. I know it's in there. This is where he's been keeping the files." Jake nodded grimly. He stepped forward and began to inspect the safe. After a few moments, he turned to her with a serious expression. "This isn't just a safe, Liv. It's encrypted. We'll need more time." Olivia's frustration flared. "We don't have time, Jake. Richard could be here any second. Do you understand that?" Jake held her gaze. "I do. But if we rush this, we risk making a mistake. We need to be sure." He knelt beside the safe and began typing in a series of numbers, pulling out a small device from his pocket. The safe beeped softly, and the lock clicked open. Olivia's breath caught. "You did it," she breathed. Jake opened the door of the safe slowly, revealing a stack of files, papers, photographs, and discs, all neatly organized. Olivia's heart raced as she sifted through them. This was it, the evidence. Everything she needed to expose Richard. Everything she needed to bring him down. "Get the files," Jake urged. "We need to leave now." Olivia grabbed the stack, holding it tightly. Her fingers shook as she flipped through the pages, each document more damning than the last. There were contracts, receipts, and even photographs showing Richard and Randall Pierce meeting with some of the most dangerous people in the world. Olivia's stomach churned. This was more than just a marriage gone wrong. This was a web of crime, corruption, and murder. Richard had been hiding in plain sight, using his position of power to orchestrate everything. As Olivia scanned the files, a particular document caught her eye. It was a letter, dated just a week ago. The contents of the letter were chilling. It was a warning to someone named Carter, telling him to keep quiet about the accident that had occurred and promising that everything would be taken care of. "What is it?" Jake asked, leaning over her shoulder. Olivia handed him the letter, her voice steady but filled with a quiet rage. "Someone's dead. And Richard's behind it. He had someone killed to cover his tracks." Jake's face went pale. He set the letter down, his mind clearly racing. "This is bad, Liv. This changes everything." Olivia stood up, her mind made up. "We can't let this go. We have to go public with it. We can't let Richard get away with it." Before Jake could respond, Olivia heard a sound, a car door slamming outside the storage unit. Her heart dropped into her stomach. "Shit," Jake muttered. "Someone's here." They both froze. Olivia's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. She had been so focused on the files that she hadn't been paying attention to the surroundings. They had been too careless. Richard's people were on their way. Jake grabbed her arm. "We need to get out of here. Now." They darted to the back of the unit, and Olivia's pulse pounded in her ears as they crept along the narrow space between the units. She could hear the sound of footsteps getting closer, heavy, determined. Someone was coming, and they weren't here for a friendly chat. Olivia and Jake reached the rear of the storage complex, where a narrow alley led to the parking lot. As they turned the corner, Olivia's eyes scanned the area for a way out. But it was too late. A car pulled up at the far end of the lot, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Richard's voice rang out, cutting through the silence. "I knew you'd come for it eventually, Liv. Olivia froze. She turned slowly, her hands shaking as she faced her husband for the first time in days. His face was cold, calculating. There was no trace of the man she had once loved in his eyes. "You're too late," Richard continued, his voice low. "The game is over." But Olivia wasn't going to back down. Not now. She stepped forward, holding the files tightly in her arms. "I have everything I need to destroy you," she said, her voice trembling but fierce. Richard didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, and Olivia realized just how dangerous he truly was. "We'll see about that," he said. "We'll see about that." Olivia's heart raced as Richard's words echoed in her ears. His calm, calculated demeanor made everything worse, the coldness in his eyes sending an icy shiver down her spine. She could almost hear the ticking of a clock, the seconds counting down to whatever was coming next. Jake's grip on her arm tightened, a silent warning to stay sharp. Olivia could see the tension in his eyes, his own nerves barely held in check. She wanted to speak, to challenge him, to throw the truth in Richard's face. But something about the way he stood there, his arrogance, the subtle confidence in his stance, made her hesitate. "You're not going to get away with this, Richard," Olivia said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "I have everything. The files, the evidence, it's all right here." Richard took a step forward, his gaze flicking to the files she held tightly against her chest. His lips curled into a smirk, a look of amusement that made Olivia's blood run cold. "You think that'll stop me?" His voice was a low, mocking tone. "You think you're the first person to dig up dirt on me? I've been through worse. You're nothing." His words hit her like a slap, and she could feel the weight of them pressing down on her chest. How had it come to this? The man she had once loved, the man she had trusted with everything, had turned into a monster. But Olivia wasn't about to back down. "I'm not nothing," she shot back, her voice firm now. "And I'm not afraid of you anymore." Richard raised an eyebrow, his eyes flicking to Jake. "You brought him along, too? How cute. But it doesn't matter. You can't stop what's coming, Liv." Jake stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You've already lost, Richard. We have everything. The only question left is how far you're willing to go to bury the truth." For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the sound of the rain falling around them, creating an eerie, tense atmosphere. Olivia could feel the weight of the moment. They were standing on the edge of something much bigger than herself, something far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Richard didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a step back, his face unreadable. Olivia's mind raced, trying to figure out what he was thinking, what he was planning. She couldn't afford to make another mistake. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket, and Richard pulled it out, glancing at the screen. His face shifted, just for a moment, his expression hardening. "Well," he said coldly, "it looks like the game has just changed." Before Olivia could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps reached her ears. She turned instinctively, her eyes narrowing as two men emerged from the shadows. They were tall, broad-shouldered, and exuded an air of menace. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. "Richard," one of the men said, his voice gruff. "We need to move. Now." Richard didn't even look at them, his eyes still locked on Olivia. "I've got this," he said. "Just handle the situation. I'll take care of the rest." The two men didn't question him. They simply nodded, their eyes scanning the area, as if looking for any sign of danger. Richard's expression remained cold as he turned his attention back to Olivia. "You should have stayed away, Liv," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "But now you've crossed a line. There's no going back for you." Olivia's pulse quickened. She felt trapped, cornered. There was no way out, no escape from the situation she had found herself in. But she wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when she was so close. Who are these people? Jake demanded, his voice sharp. What's going on, Richard? Richard didn't answer. Instead, he nodded to the two men, who immediately stepped forward, their movements swift and practiced. Olivia barely had time to react before one of the men grabbed her arm, his grip like iron. Let go of me. Olivia shouted, trying to pull away, but the man's grip tightened. Jake reacted immediately, shoving the man away from Olivia. Get your hands off her. But the second man stepped forward, shoving Jake back with surprising force. Stay out of this, he warned, his voice low and threatening. Olivia's mind raced. She couldn't let them take her. She couldn't let Richard win. She had the evidence. She had everything she needed to bring him down. But she had to get out. She had to get away. In a split second, she made a decision. She shoved the files into Jake's hands. Go, she hissed, her voice urgent. Get out of here. Take the files and run. Jake hesitated for only a moment, his eyes flashing with uncertainty. Liv, we can't just do it. Olivia snapped, her heart pounding. I'll hold them off. Just go. Without waiting for another word, Jake turned and sprinted down the alley, disappearing into the night. Olivia watched him go, her chest tight with fear and guilt. But there was no time to dwell on that. She had to stay focused. The two men looked at each other, then back at Olivia. The tension in the air was palpable. Olivia stood her ground, her eyes flashing with defiance. You think this is over? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. You're wrong. I have the proof. Richard's done. One of the men laughed, a low, sinister sound. You think anyone's going to believe you? You're just a woman, Liv. A woman with nothing but some paperwork. And we both know how easy it is to make that disappear. Olivia's blood ran cold. Not if I make sure it's seen. Not if I make sure the world knows who you really are. The man's smile faltered. You really think you can just waltz in and expose all of this? You have no idea what you're up against. But Olivia wasn't listening to him anymore. She wasn't afraid anymore. She'd come this far. And she wasn't going to stop now. She took a deep breath, her eyes locking with Richard's, who stood silently in the background, watching. He hadn't moved. He hadn't said anything since Olivia had ordered Jake to run. His face remained unreadable. Richard, Olivia said, her voice sharp. You can't hide forever. The truth will come out. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you try to bury it. Richard finally spoke, his voice cold and indifferent. You think you've won? You're already dead, Liv. I'll make sure of it. But before he could say anything more, Olivia did something that surprised even her. She turned on her heel and ran, straight toward the street, straight toward freedom. The two men hesitated for a moment before giving chase, but it was too late. Olivia had a head start. She heard their footsteps behind her, but she didn't dare look back. She had one goal now, survive. She could hear the pounding of her heart in her ears as she raced down the rain-slicked street, her mind focused on the one thing that mattered now, getting to safety. Every step felt like an eternity, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. And just as she rounded the corner, she saw headlights in the distance. Jake was back. He hadn't left her behind. He hadn't given up. He pulled up beside her, his window rolled down. Get in, he shouted. Without a second thought, Olivia jumped into the car, slamming the door behind her. Jake didn't waste time. He floored the gas pedal, and they sped off into the night, leaving the danger, the lies, and the chaos behind them. Olivia leaned back against the seat, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She had no idea what would happen next, but she knew one thing, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The truth was out there. And no matter how hard Richard tried to bury it, it would come to light. She wouldn't let it stay hidden. The road ahead seemed endless, a winding path through a dark and stormy night. Olivia's mind raced, filled with the sounds of her own heartbeat, the roar of the engine, and the steady rhythm of the rain against the windshield. She could feel the weight of everything pressing down on her, every choice, every decision that had brought her here. Jake was driving with a fierce determination, his eyes locked on the road ahead. The car swerved slightly as the tires struggled to maintain traction on the slick pavement, but he didn't slow down. Every so often, Olivia glanced at him, noting the tightness of his jaw, the worry lines etched into his face. She could tell he was worried about her, about what had just happened, about what was still to come. Olivia didn't have the luxury of stopping to process everything. There was no time for reflection. Richard's words still echoed in her ears, threatening to unravel everything she had fought for. "You're already dead, Liv. I'll make sure of it." She couldn't let those words take root in her mind. She had made it this far. She had to keep going. For herself. For the truth. "Where are we going?" Olivia's voice broke the silence, the tension in the air thick with uncertainty. Jake didn't answer right away, his hands gripping the wheel. "To a place I know," he finally said, his voice tight. "It's safe. We need to lay low for a while until we can figure out our next move." Olivia nodded, though she wasn't sure what she expected. Everything had been moving so fast. There had been no time to plan, no time to think. They were just reacting, barely staying one step ahead of Richard and his people. But what had they really gained? What would stopping for a few days accomplish? Was it really going to be enough to stop Richard from coming after them? She leaned back in the seat, her mind churning with unanswered questions. The files were in Jake's possession now, but that didn't change anything. Richard was powerful. He had resources. He wasn't going to let something like this slip through his fingers. But they had something Richard didn't. They had the truth. And that truth was going to bring him down. The rain began to taper off as they pulled up to an old, weathered house on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't much, just a small one-story building tucked away behind a high fence. There were no signs, no indication that anyone lived there. The perfect place to hide out for a while. Jake parked the car in the driveway, the engine cutting off with a low rumble. He turned to Olivia, his face unreadable. "Stay here," he said quietly, his eyes intense. "I'll go inside first, check things out. Make sure it's safe." Olivia didn't argue. She knew better than to question him right now. He was the one with the plan, the one who had the experience. She nodded, her gaze flicking nervously to the house. "Be careful." Jake gave her a tight smile before stepping out of the car, the sound of his footsteps fading as he approached the front door. Olivia watched him go, her mind still buzzing with everything that had happened. Every corner she turned, every step she took, she couldn't escape the overwhelming feeling that danger was closing in on her from all sides. She didn't want to be afraid. She couldn't afford to be afraid. But the truth was that fear was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. The thought of what Richard could do, what he was capable of, made her stomach churn. He wasn't just a powerful man, he was a dangerous one. And now, he had a reason to come after her. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The last few days had been a blur of chaos and confusion. She hadn't had time to grieve, to process the betrayal, to come to terms with what Richard had done. It felt like her entire world had been flipped upside down. And now, it was all coming to a head. After what felt like an eternity, Jake returned, his face grim but resolute. "It's clear," he said, opening the car door and sliding back into the seat. "We're safe here for now. But we can't stay long. We need to move quickly." Olivia didn't ask any questions. She could tell from his tone that there was no time to waste. She turned her gaze toward the house, her heart pounding in her chest. So, what's the next step? Jake paused, clearly weighing his words before answering. We need to release the information. We need to go public with it. Olivia's stomach twisted at the thought. Are you sure? If we do that, Richard will come after us even harder. He won't let this go. Jake met her eyes, his expression unwavering. That's exactly why we have to do it. He's already been trying to silence you. He's been covering up his tracks for years. If we keep hiding, if we don't expose the truth now, he'll keep getting away with it. Olivia nodded slowly. He was right. As much as it terrified her to think about putting everything out in the open, it was the only way. The truth needed to come to light. She needed to do this, for herself, for everyone who had been affected by Richard's lies and manipulation. Okay, she said quietly, her voice steady with determination. Let's do it. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. Jake worked quickly, contacting the right people, setting up the release of the information. Olivia sat by his side, her nerves on edge as she watched him type out messages, arrange meetings, and take phone calls. She knew they were running out of time. Richard was out there, and he was already looking for them. Finally, it was done. The files were uploaded. The world would know the truth. Jake leaned back in his chair, rubbing a hand over his face. It's out there, he said, his voice tired but relieved. Now we just have to wait. Olivia stared at the screen, her thoughts racing. She could feel the weight of the moment, the gravity of what they had just done. They had exposed Richard for who he really was. They had laid bare the lies, the corruption, the manipulation. But now, they had to face the consequences. Richard wouldn't go down without a fight. Olivia knew that much for sure. The danger wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. A sudden knock at the door snapped her out of her thoughts. She tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for the gun Jake had insisted she carry. Jake shot her a glance, his brow furrowed. Stay here, he whispered, his voice low. I'll handle this. Olivia nodded, her heart in her throat. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was it. That the moment they had been dreading had finally arrived. The door creaked open, and Olivia held her breath, waiting for what came next. To her surprise, it wasn't Richard's men standing in the doorway. It was someone else entirely. A woman, tall and striking, with dark hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore a suit, a stark contrast to the tension of the moment, her posture confident and poised. I'm not here to cause trouble, the woman said, her voice calm but firm. I'm here to help. Olivia blinked, confused. Help, she repeated, glancing at Jake. Who are you? My name is Claire Donovan, the woman said, stepping into the room without waiting for an invitation. I've been tracking Richard for a long time. I know everything he's been doing. And I can help you finish what you started. Jake's eyes narrowed, his suspicion evident. How do we know we can trust you? Claire smiled, though it was more of a grim acknowledgement than a friendly gesture. Because I've been trying to bring him down for years. I have the resources you need. And I can make sure you're safe. But you have to trust me. Time is running out. Olivia exchanged a glance with Jake. She didn't know what to think. But she knew one thing for sure, they didn't have any other options. All right, Olivia said, her voice steady. We'll trust you. But this better be good. Claire nodded, her expression serious. It is. I promise you, Richard won't be able to get away with this. Not this time. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal battles, media coverage, and mounting pressure. Claire kept her word, pulling strings and using her connections to ensure the truth about Richard's empire of corruption was spread far and wide. Olivia and Jake were both in the public eye now, their names splashed across headlines as the story unfolded. It was everything they had fought for. But it came at a cost. The danger had not disappeared. Richard's people were still out there, still trying to protect their leader, but with each passing day, Olivia felt the weight of the fight begin to lift. She had won. Richard was finally exposed. And the world would never be the same. It wasn't until the final moments of the trial, as the judge's gavel fell, sealing Richard's fate, that Olivia allowed herself to breathe. The truth had won. And for the first time in a long while, Olivia could look ahead to a future built on something solid. She had survived. She had fought. And she had brought justice to light. The journey had been long. But it was over. And the lesson was clear: truth always has a way of rising to the surface, no matter how deep it's buried.